2024 is halfway over, and all I can say is thank the Lord above. This year has driven me nuts. And you know who I blame this all on? You know whose fault this is? It's your fault, Cat Williams, because it all started with you. This year had all the promise in the world. We were just going to be like, we're going to be riding high. 2024 is the year we going to do more. We going to get it straight. It's going to be cool. And this dude came out of the blocks and stirred the petty pot. And ever since he went all Club Shay Shay on us, we had to deal with this and this and this and probably a million more examples that I'm forgetting. It's been a year. But as weird as a year that it's been a surprisingly decent year for music. There's been actually a lot of stuff that I genuinely like. It started a little slow, but it picked up, especially in the recent months. So let's take some time to check out the 20 best albums of 2024 so far. You know what? Ain't too bad. Cat Williams, you still shady. Thank you for joining me for another edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions here in the grandiose land of YouTube. Thank you for stopping by and seeing your boy. And yep, today we're talking about the best albums of the year so far. Now, if you are a reader of soulandstereo.com, and you should be, look, videos are cool, but reading is fundamental. Go and read that too. soulandstereo.com, get your life. But if you have read my previous list that I put out not too long ago, a few weeks back, stick around because there are going to be new additions. We've had new heat since then. So if you are a Soul and Stereo OG and you follow the site, I got you. I'm going to reward your loyalty with some new stuff and some new thoughts. Some stuff I haven't reviewed will be right here. But before we get started, y'all know what it is. Take a second and hit the like button real quick over in the corner. Just hit that like real quick, ping that thing, and then if you haven't already, hit subscribe. I've looked at our stats. There's a large majority of y'all who watch these videos every time I drop, and I'm very grateful for that. But y'all don't subscribe. Why not? Hit the subscribe. You'll know when new videos are coming, and for that simple click, you're doing your boy a lot of love. And once this drops, make sure you share it as well, because look, we got to put people onto the good music that's out there. And 2024 has some pretty good surprises. I listened to, as of this recording, 122 albums, mixtapes, EPs, whatevers. Listen to them. These are the 20 best. So sit back. It's going to take me a minute. Let me cook. Let me do my thing. And I'm going to put you on to 20 of the best albums of the year so far. Alright, we're going to start off with Andra Day and Cassandra with Cherith in parentheses. Most people know her as a Rise Up lady, and that song was inescapable, as is her talent. Both of those things are inescapable. And she has been on the scene for a while, doing great music, putting out great releases. To me, this is probably her best one to date. It's a real great showcase of what she can do as far as not just R&B, but kind of playing in the fields of pop, playing in the fields of jazz, and letting that incredible voice of hers ring out. It's an album that got a lot of attention when it first dropped, but like most great projects that you'll see on this list, it kind of came and went, and I thought that's a little bit of a shame. So I want to raise the status of that here and talk about how important it is to highlight these artists that are doing great things. Don't let this album slide by your players. Look, this one is one of the best of the year so far, and even though it might not have the blockbuster singles as some has, as a listening experience front to back, I think this is her best work, and for that it should be cherished, or cherith, or whatever. Let's check it out. Alright, next up on the list is Jayski and Superiors. So Jay surprised me last year with his Abolish Uncertainties album. I thought that I knew Jay prior to that, but this was the one that was like, yo, it really caused me to sit up and pay attention to him as an artist. And that momentum continues here in testament of the times. He teams up with producer Superior, and he does what he always does. He gives those deliberate bars and that really aggressive flow that isn't overpowering, but it captures your attention. You never zoom out. You never zone out on a Jayski's record like this. It's one that really hits home with the themes, and he's a really underrated storyteller as well. That flows throughout this project. It might not have like the polish, I don't know if that's the right word, as Abolished Uncertainties, which really felt like a fully formed project. This one is kind of like just some heat that seems like almost like an appetizer to tide you over for the real meal. I mean, don't get me wrong, these are some really good appetizers here. This is not skimping. He gave you of himself. But it might not be as grandiose as the previous project, but there's enough there to hold you over for that next great album that I know he's going to deliver. A really, really fun release. Another one I feel like that was a little underrated. So make sure you check this one out. For my hip-hop fans who's looking for some bars, this one's for you. Up next is Ledisi and Good Life. This is sort of a comeback album for Ledisi, but it's kind of weird when you think of it like that, because she feels like an artist who never really went anywhere. But after going off a few years to conquer Hollywood, she's back doing what she always does, and that's R&B, and she does it at the highest level. I was really disappointed to hear on social media recently that she's been very disillusioned. She wanted to quit the game entirely. She's just feels like she's unappreciated as an artist, and I understand why, because there's so many artists like her that consistently do great music. It just doesn't get the love and support that it deserves. And I'm not saying that as like a pity to let it, oh, support her so she's not sad. No, I'm saying support this album because it's very good. It's one of the best R&B albums of the year, hence why it's on this list. I mean, you got DJ Camper and heavy hitting producers like that doing their thing on this project, and when it comes to vocal performances, she always gives you a passionate performance. It's pretty much, if you know Ledisi, this album is the best of Ledisi, all in one package. Probably her best album in recent memory. I wouldn't call it her best overall album, but it's one of her better ones in recent memory. This was a great comeback, so to speak, a great way to reintroduce herself to the game, and I hope she understands and realizes she has a lot that she brings, and this album is proof of that. So Ledisi, hang on with us. Give us a little bit more patience. You have a lot to bring, and we're listening. Up next is an album that I didn't think would be here, but yes, we are here. The Dog Pound, We All We Got. My 90s heart is all about reliving nostalgia. Like how we all just want to go back to those days where we had nothing to do but turn on the radio, listen to the new records, maybe hop on the Super Nintendo real quick, just chill with your friends. When I think of Dog Pound, that's what I think of. That era where I had no worries except, all right, my homework done, I'm chilling, I'm listening to my music, I'm playing my video games, I'm hanging out with my friends. Their music is so feel good. I mean, of course, some of that stuff we probably shouldn't have been listening to at that age, but it's a lot of nostalgia for me. But what I appreciate about this album is not just nostalgia. The Dog Pound, these puppies have grown up, they full-grown dogs, and with that comes wisdom. So you get the production that's very much a reminder of its era and their peak, But if you listen to their bars, these are much more mature MCs, and they're talking about family. And it's not just having fun and the homies can't have none. It's not that anymore. It's about growth and maturity. Those things that really resonate for older hip-hop fans as hip-hop matures, they're telling that story. But the charisma's still there, the features are still there, Snoop Dogg is all over this thing, the Lady of Rage pops through and absolutely steals the show. Great album. I again did not think I would have so much fun with a Dog Pound album in 2024, but here we are. One of the year's most pleasant surprises. Alright, up next is Marsha Ambrosius and Casablanco. Not Casablanco, Casablanco. Whatever. I'm just surprised this album dropped because y'all know how Dr. Dre moves. Let's be real. He says an album's coming out, that thing is sitting on his shelf for 30 years. But we actually got this project. And the biggest thing about this project, my gosh, is the production. The production is some of the best. No exaggeration, some of the best I've heard in years. The way that it marries hip-hop samples, soulfulness, it's like someone decided I was gonna make a James Bond soundtrack using old samples from hip-hop in the 90s. Sounds weird, sounds like it doesn't make sense, but if you listen to it, it's incredible. I know this album has gotten a little bit of mixed reviews, some pushback because of the production is so incredible that sometimes it overshadows Marsha's performance. I've heard that said a few times, and I understand that argument, but to me, I think it still works, and it still works as an overall project. Marsha, of course, one of my favorites in the past decade. Her first two albums, oh, incredible, incredible. And this is another strong entry in her catalog. She's always had great chemistry with Dr. Dre, and putting her kind of strong vocal histrionics over these captivating beats just makes for a very different listening experience. It's not one that's gonna really hit you at first. It's one of those ones that you really got to take some time to get to understand and let everything kind of settle. It's kind of like when you have a great meal, but then the next day it tastes even better after it sits in the refrigerator a little while. Those ingredients kind of like mix a little bit better. That's how I feel this album is. A great album, a great example of superior production and what happens when you take a great singer and great producer and lock them in a room and let magic happen. You get albums like this. Next up is Master Ace, Marco Polo, Richmond Hill. So a few years ago, these two dropped Brooklyn Story, and I thought that it was one of the best albums of the 2010s, bar none. And they're coming back here, back on their same grind. It's kind of in the same vein, more of the storytelling that we know about. Master Ace is one of the most underrated artists in hip-hop history. He is incredible. He just never got that real breakout moment for him to really shine like he should have. But when it comes to storytelling, he's really top 10 easily. And lyrically, he's no joke either. And he has great chemistry here with Marco Polo. Again, this is another opportunity to have kind of a storytelling aspect. It's kind of recapping Marco's life. And it's kind of cool having this narrator as Master Ace going through and talking about all the elements of this story. Captivating from beginning to end, great production. It's what you expect from these two. Another album that's very high on the list because they just do what they do at such a high level. Up next is Cy Smith, Until We Meet Again. Miss Smith, another one of the secret weapons of R&B. If you're a fan of Foreign Exchange, you know how great she is and how underrated that whole collective is. And she's been doing her solo projects, of course, along all these times, but it's weird. It's like she never gets the recognition, or not even recognition. It's like these projects just fly like right under the radar and people just completely miss them. Go back and check them out. But before you do that, go check this one out because it's easily one of the best R&B albums of the year. Maybe one of her best albums now that I think about it. I love this album because it's so fully formed. You get the nostalgia. You get kind of the stuff that showcases her more flirty side. You get all these aspects mixed together with her just alluring vocals. And that's the best way I can describe her vocals. Alluring. Foreign Exchange always has incredible production. That is no different here. That is the same what you always get. And it's just what she delivers. She really delivers what, when people say, oh, bring R&B back, she is one of those artists who never lost it. She's always delivered that level of 2000s R&B that's become like this, oh, people want to go back to that era. She's been doing it ever since. Y'all just missed out. But she's taken those elements, moved those to a 2024 era, and continues to build upon that, whether it's Foreign Exchange or her solo stuff. Such a fun album. I knew this would be good, but it kind of exceeded my expectations. This list is not a list that's in order. We'll rank them at the end of the year. But as of right now, this one's pretty high on the list of best albums of the year. A great release, a great artist. Miss Smith never misses. Never misses. Alright, next up, an album I did not expect to be here. I know you're surprised as I am. Yes, Megan Thee Stallion with Megan. It is no secret that I have not been enamored with Megan's career over the years. And I know the stands are always at my throat. And they're like, oh, you hate women. You hate women. You hate Meg because you hate women. Yes, I hate black women. You clearly have not seen my list full of black women singers, black women MCs. But I'm okay on Megan, so I hate women. Alright, y'all gotta try to troll harder because it's whack. Regardless, again, I never disliked Megan as an artist. Her stuff was just always the same. It's like if there is a movie that you like on Netflix and it's like successful and they make the same movie 10 times in a row, you're gonna get bored. Most of Megan's stuff was at a decent level, but it was the same cadence. It was the same topics. It was the same. But here on Megan, this album, she has so much to get off her chest because we know what happened with that little Lucky Charms man in Canada. She got rid of him. And the stories that have come out of that, the persecution she's gotten from her peers in hip-hop, she has so much to say about striking out against those who had negative things and tried to demean her career. When an artist has something to say, you get great music. And that is what has happened. This is an album to me that moves Megan from just the usual twerk people. You know that twerk people, they all live in this twerk bubble. To an artist who absolutely stands on her own as someone with something to say and an album that will encourage women going forward. All the stuff I hear about the Tina Snow mixtapes, to me, this is what this album encapsulates. Great production, great messaging, and a fiery delivery because she really wants to let people know she's standing on her own. I have much respect for her. This album by far is the best thing I've ever heard from her. And if we can keep on this level, I'm going to be a Megan fan for real. I'm going to be twerking on this table. Actually, no, I'm not. Next up is No Worries and Why Lord. Why Lord, why? Anderson .Paak and Knowledge are though, it's like a duo that I never thought that we needed. But now that we got them, it's like y'all need to make albums all the time. And their previous release was one of those hidden gems of its year. And this one may prove to be the same of 2024. We all know how great Anderson .Paak is. The man is just incredibly talented. And with the production of Knowledge, it's even better. Because whereas the first album was just them being goofy and silly and lucky in love, this one is a much more mature exploration of heartbreak and growing up. That's what this album is about, living life and growing through the next level. And I love the themes that hit. It's sometimes a little more somber than you would think, but even through that somberness, there is still great artistry to be found. Another album that I do think this one is getting a little bit of the attention that it deserves, but it deserves a little bit more. That's why we shouting it out here. Anderson is one of the best of his generation. Knowledge, one of the most underrated producers. You put them together, you got some magic. Why, Lord? Give me more, Lord. Up next is Marv 1. I'm fine, thanks for asking. That's the name of the title. That's not what's going on with me. Although I am fine. Marv is great. He's been in the game longer than some of y'all watching this video, I promise. And you probably aren't familiar with the name. But he's been holding down the rap scene in Detroit for forever. That dude has been out here for forever. And I love that this is an opportunity for him to continue to step up. He's another artist that you don't hear about, but consistently is working to put out great music. This album works because it's an album. He has something to say from front to back. He really was like, I'm going to create a fully formed project. I'm not just going to slap together a bunch of random tracks and compile it and put it on a playlist, because that's what that is, a playlist. This is a fully formed album that really talks about his journey through life, but he does it in such a relatable way. The song where he talks about how he could never do anything shady because his mom is being nosy, looking in his room, looking in his stuff. Not that I was doing anything terrible, but I can relate. We all can relate to parents who be all up in your business. And those are stories that you never hear in hip hop, especially modern hip hop, but putting a personal touch to the storytelling. To me, that's what elevates it and makes a real storyteller hit another level. I don't want to hear about your fake drug tales all the time. I want to hear about your real life. And he brings real life to his music, making it truly authentic. Great album, maybe his best album. So shout out to Marv for always being one of those artists to consistently hold it down, not just for Detroit, but for the culture itself. Up next is Layla Hathaway and Fant Black. Fant Black. So Layla, despite my reputation for wilding out for garbage music whenever I hear it, I'm never reactionary. I always have thoughtful takes. Y'all gonna say I don't? I always do. If I say it, I think before I say it. And when I went on social media and said, this is probably her best work ever, a lot of y'all like, oh, recency bias, oh, you just heard. It's been a few weeks now. I'm still saying this is probably the best thing she's done. And she has a lot of great albums. Dr. Layla Hathaway, we all know her pedigree, the daughter of one of the best vocalists of all time, but she has stood on her own because not only does she has great stories, a great legacy, but she has her personal stories to add to this music. Fant Black is the name of this album because it's the blackest of black, apparently. It's like the darkest of color. And she feels like when she was creating this album, this was the blackest album she was going to do. And that really resonates. The culture that it talks about so much, not just from just the culture of black people, but the culture of black womanhood is what really resonates throughout this album. It's very good. And then, of course, she just singing. The song with Fonte, one of my favorite songs of the year. She is so passionate in her delivery and so impactful and purposeful in her writing. Another album, I believe, that is absolutely one that should be on your playlist, if it's not already. Forget the hype. Forget those overhyped albums. Sometimes you just got to keep it real. You got to keep it black. Keep it Fant Black. Layla did this, and no matter what y'all say, I think it's one of her best ones. Forget recency bias. Just one of her best albums. Up next is Seafood Sam, Standing on Giant Shoulders. I'm pretty new to this Seafood Sam party. This seafood party is new to me. I just kind of got introduced to his music maybe less than a year ago. And I was like, man, how did I miss this guy? For those who aren't familiar, Seafood might be is best relatable to kind of like a Currency almost, where his flow is extremely laid back and his beats are just like immaculate. Imagine just like those immaculately decadent Rick Rossy kind of beats, sounding almost elegant in this laid back flow, but he just rides that thing. He's just riding over that beat. And that's what Standing on Giant Shoulders is. This artist who is able to captivate in the most laid back of ways while just maneuvering these incredible beats. And I love that he's able to almost harken back to the days of like Stax Records. It gives me that kind of vintage feel over his production, but he's able to match that without being overpowered. And his bars are incredible, his delivery is masterful, and the production is top notch. Again, probably not a name you know, but Seafood Sam needs to be on the top of your list. If you are really into that laid back, if you're like in the mood for some laid back hip hop that's going to make you just sit and think, it's going to be atmospheric, it's going to set the mood. Seafood not only has something to say, he's got bars that he can just ride to. Glide over those joints, glide. You're going to dig this one. Next up, my boy, Lucky Daye Algorithm. If you are new to the game, let me put you on to 4 words that we live by here at Soul and Stereo. Lucky Daye, don't miss. And he refuses to miss. Once again, he has dropped Algorithm. Once again, it's one of the best albums of the year. Once again, he's working with D-Mile, and once again he has exceeded the album that came before it. So his previous albums, Painted and Candy Drip, they were great on their own, but this album hits a little bit differently because it has a rock aesthetic. And that, while you might be like, oh, I don't know, I came here for R&B, I didn't come from rock, the marriage really works very well. He shows that he is not only a great writer, but able to adjust his flow to give a completely different project this time out. The first half of the album is very experimental, but it works. The second half is more kind of traditional Lucky, and while that's not as daring, I kind of wish he continued being daring. If you know what he knows, you know he's going to give you that quality. So even if you want some of that throwback Lucky, oh, he got that at the end of the album. But for the first half, he's going to experiment. He's going to be a little bit more risky, and it always pays off. To me, this may be R&B album of the year. It's still kind of early. Again, we're not ranking on this list right now. We'll see how things how they fall in place at the end of the year. But as of right now, this one's going to be hard to beat. One of the best of the year. And you know why? Lucky Daye, don't miss. Alright, next up is Slum Village and Fun, F-U-N. I mean, the title absolutely reflects what this album is all about. So Slum Village, y'all know how that goes. Those brothers have had more lineup changes than Drew Hill. I can't keep them straight. They're like the NWO of rap. But besides that, they may be down to 2 members, but these 2 members put in work. You think about Slum Village, you think about the J Dilla inspired production. That's not quite what we get here, but instead what we get is a very funky, very energetic, just are a bunch of rap veterans who are looking to cut loose and have, well, fun. This is a very expressive album, one that is pretty much in the themes of Slum Village that you already know and love, but it's just a more laid back version of these veteran MCs just kicking it. These are the dudes at the club that don't care. They know they're the old heads at the club. They don't care. They're there to have a good time. They're not thinking about anybody else. They're there for fun, and I like that maturity. They're embracing who they are, and they're having a good time with it, and they're taking us along with it too. A great album that was another one of the surprises of the year, and what more can you say? The joint is just fun. Next up is Lupe Fiasco and Samurai. If Lupe drops an album, best believe it's probably going to be on one of my best of lists because he just always delivers. And I won't go into my usual rant about how Lupe should be up there with J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar, but he should. And it's kind of a shame that he doesn't. But it's okay, because Lupe is just going to do what he does. And this album is a little bit of a, kind of like a connected verse, kind of an extension of what he did in his previous album, Drill Music in Zion. I loved that album because it was such a reflection of early 90s, late 80s jazzy rap. It was very jazzily produced, and you can see elements of that here in Samurai. It's just the same laid-back production with Lupe just doing his mind-bending lyricism. I think he called himself like the best lyricist in the game right now, and people got all worked up because people don't understand what lyricism is. Actually, I think he said he was a better lyricist than Kendrick, and people are like, oh! If you understand what lyricism is, he has a great point. Not just talking about overall rapping, but the actual art of lyricism. Other than Black Thought, I can't think of anybody who is better at that construction of hip-hop right now. And his level is still very high. He may not have the mainstream attention that he had back in the early days in the laser era, even back then. But what he's doing is just quietly producing incredibly thoughtful hip-hop that just continues to bend minds. If he's a samurai, he's got a sword and he's going to unsheath it. And once he takes it out, heads are going to roll every single time. This dude is still slaying the competition all these decades later. Another incredible album in his discography. Alright, coming up next is Benny the Butcher, Everybody Can't Go. So Benny and his Griselda gang, they've always been locked in kind of that boom bap box. Man, say that 5 times fast. Boom bap box. And it's kind of the start where he can only do this gritty type of hip hop. But as we've seen with him and other albums that have come out recently, even Conway, who also dropped a solid album this year, these artists are more than just like underground dudes. They can do more than that. And Everybody Can't Go is a delicate balance between boom bap and the gritty side and a more mainstream side. And of all of the Griselda guys, I think that it works best with Benny because he has the charisma to bridge gaps. It's almost like in the early 90s where we saw with Method Man, where he was able to do the woo stuff, but you knew he had a radio hit in him because his flow was so engaging and his delivery is so good. And that's what I really like about this album here. This is another album that I saw that had some really kind of mixed takes when it released. And I know that that might just be because Griselda folks dropped albums like that, and it's hard for people to digest them, and it's like, oh, here's another one. But this one's a little different than the others in Benny's catalog. And while it's not the best album he's put out, it absolutely stands above some of the others. And obviously, because it's on his list, it stands above most of the albums we've heard this year. Another win from Benny as he continued to refine his game and really finds that top echelon part of hip hop where I think he can reside. Alright, up next is Brother Ali and Unjust Love and Service. And to me, this album is the best kind of nostalgia bait. Here's why. So Unjust, the producer, he has the foresight to go through and create all these dope beats using clips from educational programs from like the 70s and the 80s. Real interesting idea. And then you got Brother Ali just doing his usual OG wisdom, spitting lyrics, spitting facts, spitting the OG wisdom over these really interesting chopped up samples. The result is just this album that has a lot of life lessons, but it's so dope it never veers into the preachy category. So it's an album that I didn't expect to be on this list, like many that I've said so far, but the ingenuity that was used by Unjust to create these beats in the way that they were handled to kind of give lessons without being a little hitting you over the head with it, I thought was expertly done. Brother Ali, we don't talk about enough as far as one of those OGs who continues to never just have a lost step. It's always consistently dropped great content over the years. Another example of that. And another album many of y'all probably slept on, but you better wake up. This is a good one. We just have 3 albums left on this list, so thank y'all for hanging in there. But before we hit those 3, I'm gonna step back and let my boy producer D Roth break y'all off with some of the honorable mentions, some of those good albums that didn't have time to get all the way on the full list, but you should probably check them out. D Roth, hit them with the honorable mentions. Show them what's good. Here's an album that I have not talked about in any space except the Soul and Stereo Cypher on Facebook until now. Common and Pete Rock, the Auditorium Volume 1, one of the more anticipated albums of the year, and it lives up to the hype. Common, I have always said, is like the conscience of hip-hop. He is the living embodiment of what hip-hop at its best can be, when it's storytelling, when it's bars. I mean, he can hit you with the wisdom, but he can slap you in the face with some heat too if you need. If you step out of line, you're going to get that too. And that's what hip-hop is about. This album unites one of the best, and at this point, underrated lyricists of all time, and pairs on with one of the best producers. There was no doubt this one was going to hit. And it was really just how good is it going to be? And it's very, very good. I will say though, because I've seen some people say, oh, it's the best Common album of all time. Let's slow that down a little bit. This album is indeed good because it plays to both their strengths. Pete Rock knows how to create production that perfectly accents Common. And Common's never at a loss of stories to tell. And especially the stories he's telling right now. They're very, I feel like, on target for what hip hop needs to hear. But Common has one of the more underrated discographies in hip hop history. He's got some absolute near 5-star albums, like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. So I wouldn't put this at the top end of Common projects because the bar is just too high, but it's absolutely at the high end of hip hop projects for 2024. An album that had lots of high expectations, and I thought they were met. Alright, next up is Beyonce and Cowboy Carter. It's a little interesting to me. I posited this on social media recently. It's kind of interesting and surprising how this album kind of came and went. Like, it was all anybody talked about for forever. But once those think pieces dried up in like week 2, she went back to shilling those hair products, and we didn't hear anything else about this album. Which is sad because, in my opinion, this is one of Beyonce's better albums in a long time. Yes, for those who are still screaming death to me and my family, I think it's better than Renaissance. Renaissance was okay. This one was better. This was very well done, and I won't say that, oh, this is an authentic country album, because I know to stay in my lane, unlike most of y'all. I'm not going to comment on the country authenticity when that's not my genre. I wish some of y'all would stay out of hip-hop and R&B when it's not your genre, but we'll get to that another time. What I do know is good music, and Beyonce was able to capture elements from classic country tracks, and not only do that, she's got lots of actual R&B up here, and we have not heard R&B Beyonce in quite a while. And all I want from Beyonce, all I want you to do, ma'am, is sing. That's all I want you to do. And we get actual singing on this album. It makes me very happy. Yeah, we got spaghetti. Yeah, we got the rapping Beyonce. I'm not too cool with that. But from the era of just the R&B, this marriage of the era of country coming together, Cowboy Carter really pulls both genres together in such an expert way. This is an opportunity as far as her kind of Renaissance series. It seems like she's reclaiming lots of genres of music that were once, either crafted by black voices or dominated by black voices. And this is her opportunity to be like, yo, we made this house. We gonna stop by, take our house back. And this shows that it's absolutely in her wheelhouse. Beyonce can do pretty much anything. That's why, in my opinion, she's the top tier entertainer of this generation. Cowboy Carter's a great feather in her cowboy hat. Sorry, had to do it. And the last album we'll look at today is Rapsody, Please Don't Cry. I understand Rapsody's frustrations because a lot of times when you hear these arguments on social media about female hip hop is so terrible, all they're rapping about is twerking, blah, 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 blah. At least we got Rapsody. Most of the people who use Rapsody as their argument winner don't even listen to Rapsody. Or when you do listen to her, you just kind of like, not for me. Rapsody is more than just your argument winner. She, in my opinion, is pretty close to Kendrick Lamar when it comes to most consistent hip-hop artists out. And for her genre and for her era, I think that she's pretty untouchable. The way this album sets up, she's setting up to be consistently, in terms of catalog, perhaps the greatest woman MC of her generation. Maybe ever, she keeps on this path, because Please Don't Cry is another stellar entry into her discography. Speaking of Kendrick, it reminds me a lot of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, an album that some of y'all watching this did not like, and I have always defended. And the reason why I defended it is because it's an album that you can't just skim through one time, hunting for the bangers, and say, oh, this doesn't appeal to me. There's a story being told, and that story is actually pretty heavy, and it takes a while to uncover and unwrap all of the layers. But this is an opportunity for Rapsody to talk about grief, to talk about womanhood, the plight of black women to always be strong and always push through, and looking through and figuring out where you can be strong and where you can be weak. It's a message that has to be really, really pushed today, because I feel like it's a message that's lost and one that's very, very important. She does that better than anyone. And best of all, she's got the bars to prove it. She's got the production to prove it. She's not with Knife One at this time. It's all good. Might not be the Knife production, but the production she has still works well. Black Odyssey and a few others give her some bangers. In my opinion, even though this list that we've gone through is not ranked 1 through 20, not yet, in my opinion, this is probably number 1, and as of right now, the best album of 2024. Holler at me in December to see if that is overtaken. If it is, someone came hard, because this is a banger and gonna be hard to beat. Gonna be hard to beat for best album of the year. Again, it's a little dense. It's a little heavy. It takes a little bit to get into, but it's a journey that's worth experiencing because she has so much to say. An incredible album from Rapsody, but we always get incredible albums from her. There we go, 20 of the best albums of 2024. I'm sure I forgot your favorite, so this is your opportunity. Run in the comments, tell me which albums that I should have put on the list. Make sure you looked at those honorable mentions though, because there were some definitely hits that were in there that I slid in. Comment knocked someone off the list because I had to get him in there, so I had to show him some love too. But yeah, go to the comments. Let me know what I missed. Let me know what probably I overrated and shouldn't have been there. This is your opportunity. Just keep it clean. Keep it clean in the comments. This edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions is a wrap. Hopefully 2024 can continue on this upward trajectory, or we'll see if the curse of Cat Williams continues to put us in this downward spiral. There ain't no telling. Play on, players.